William Walker Atkinson's The New Psychology, its message, principles, and practice. This is Chapter 1, The New Psychology. Psychology is the science of the mind. Its field is the scientific study of the mind, its functions, its laws, its activities. The study of psychology embraces the consideration of the various mental states, both in the conscious and the subconscious fields, including sensations, desires, emotions, cognitions, reasonings, decisions, volitions, and the like, as Professor William James has so well stated it. Psychology is no new science. Its history extends far back in the history of the intellectual evolution of the race. For a time it was considered but a branch of the general subject of metaphysics, and partook of the general fogginess of that branch of thought. But gradually emerging from the fog, it stood at last clearly defined as a scientific study rather than as a branch of metaphysics or philosophy. Like any other science, it is based upon ascertained facts and laws, rather than upon assumed abstract theories. Leaving behind it the conflicting theories regarding the ultimate nature of the mind, it concerns itself solely with the actual workings, activities, and operations of the mind, and the laws that appear to govern these. Instead of evolving theories of the origin and ultimate nature of the mind, and then working from the theory down to facts to fit in with the theory, psychology began to pursue scientific methods and proceeded to examine facts and phenomena in order to work back to fundamental principles. Leaving to metaphysics and philosophy the speculations regarding abstract mind and its relation to the soul, psychology devoted its entire attention to a careful and scientific examination of the working laws of the mind, their effects, consequences, conditions, and a general mode of operation. But even when this stage had been gained, psychology failed to take its practical place in the affairs of the everyday life of the people. Although divorced from the vague speculations of metaphysics and philosophy, and confining itself to provable facts and principles, psychology still retained more or less of an abstract and non-practical aspect to the majority of the race. Although considering facts and principles in a scientific manner, and adhering to the how rather than to the why features of mental activities, psychology still failed to take its place in the list of the sciences that were capable of actual application in the lives of the people. While recognized as a necessary part of the mental equipment of the educated man or woman, yet it was regarded by the masses as something impractical and not useful. The question, what is it good for, was pertinently asked by practical people of affairs. How can I use it? What will it do for me? Of what benefit is it? These questions were asked concerning it by the general public, and the answer was not furnished. But arising from this demand, actual or implied, there arose a new set of psychologists who unwittingly laid the foundations of that which is now called the New Psychology. These pioneers began working along the lines of a utilitarian psychology, a psychology that could be used in everyday life, a psychology that was workable. These pioneers did not use the term the New Psychology, nor did they realize that they were leading the science from the abstract place it had hitherto occupied. They merely sought to put into application the principles already discovered, to enable people to do things with these principles, rather than to merely contemplate them as something a little different from metaphysical and philosophical principles, but yet very similar in nature. These men and women were the unconscious workers along the lines of what is now called the pragmatic school of thought, the school that holds that the truth and value of a science, philosophy, or idea consists of its value when applied and set to work. What will it do? How will it work out? What can be done with it? What is it good for? Being the tests applied by this new school of thought. And upon the foundations erected by these earlier practical thinkers has arisen the edifice of the new psychology, or rather, the first stories of that edifice. For the building is still going on, and the structure seems destined to far exceed in the grandeur and magnificence even the fondest dreams of its earlier workers. The new psychology has made wonderful strides since the beginning of the present century. Still, the actual above-the-ground work has been done during the last 8 years, and it may be justly considered as a product of the 20th century. Some of the old school thinkers protest against this application of the pragmatic test to psychology, claiming that it should be allowed to remain in the realm of abstract thought. But these people are pulling against the tide of evolution and are practically setting their faces against the entire trend of modern thought and activity. The tendency of the age is decidedly utilitarian, and the pragmatic test is being rigidly applied to everything in the realm of thought. What is it good for? What can we do with it? How will it help us? These are the characteristic questions of the age, and all that is offered to the public mind must be subjected to that test, and must live or die according to its degree of success in meeting the requirements. The new psychology is practical, it's workable, and usable first, last, and all the time. Its very existence depends upon its agreement with these principles. The entire effort of its workers and teachers is in the direction of rendering practicable the laws of the mind. It is no longer a matter of informing people just what are certain mental faculties or states, nor even just how they operate. The new psychologist hastens to inform his students just what these principles and laws mean to him in the direction of increasing his mental efficiency, strengthening his positive qualities, and restraining and inhibiting his negative faculties and qualities. The student is informed of the various mental qualities he possesses and the laws of their operation, but, and herein lies the difference between the old and the new psychology, he is also taught how these laws may be applied to the strengthening, improving, and upbuilding of his mental being. Character building in the new psychology has been taken from its old position of a subject for lectures, sermons, and admonitions along the lines of good advice and wise counsel, and has been placed well to the front as a practical field for experiment, practice, and actual accomplishment. Excuse me. The student is no longer forced to content himself with the statement, "You should do so-and-so." He is now taught just how this so-and-so may be done. He is taught the practical work of making himself over, according to well-tested and plainly stated methods and principles. Another important feature of the work of the new psychology has been the raising of certain little understood phases of mental activity from the region of the occult and mystical, and the placing of them among the recognized and at least partially understood phenomena of psychology. Much that was formerly regarded as a part of abnormal psychology is now freely accorded a place in the normal psychology of the schools. We refer especially to that wonderful field of mental activity outside of the range of consciousness, generally known as the subconscious, the subjective or subliminal fields. Formerly regarded as belonging to the abnormal phases of mental action, these fields are now regarded as containing within them at least 9/10 of our mental activities. The field of consciousness is now recognized as comprising but a very small portion of the activities of the mind, and accordingly, the new psychology has devoted considerable of its activities to the exploration of those hitherto unsuspected regions of the mind. And the result has been that many strange and wonderful things have been discovered, scientifically examined, and classified. And in this exploration, the investigators have succeeded in throwing much light upon many dark subjects that had previously either been denied or else attributed to the supernatural. The new psychology has succeeded in showing that so far as its investigations have extended, there is no supernatural. That everything is natural. That what has been considered supernatural is merely natural phenomena, the nature of which has not been understood. That natural law and order is ever in evidence in these newly understood phases of the mind. Excuse me again. And true to its pragmatic origin, the new psychology has not contented itself with a mere exploration and examination of these subconscious regions of the mind. It no sooner discovers, examines, and classifies than it begins to consider the workable and usable features of the thing. It begins to consider and plan just how these may be turned to account in the everyday lives of the people, both in the region of developing desirable qualities and in the restraining and inhibiting of the undesirable ones. The what is it is followed by the how does it act, and then speedily is heard the how can it be used, the what is it good for, of the pragmatist. And this is the spirit in which this book upon the new psychology is written. Very little time and space is devoted to theory or speculation regarding the why. The object and intent of the work is closely bound up in the how phase of the subject, and particularly the how of its usability and workability. The pragmatic idea is adhered to throughout the entire work, with the ever-present consciousness of the what is it good for, what can I do with it, steering close to the point of how to do things. We trust that we shall be able to carry our student passengers safely over the seas of the new psychology to the haven of successful accomplishment. Chapter 2 will be the ego, or self